Hello and welcome back to KeyDigital's Compass Control online training course, Level C1 Part 3, Compass Control Software. In C1 Part 1, we introduced you to the brand and the training curriculum overall. C1 Part 2 was an introduction to the Compass Control system, defining that system for you. And C1 Part 3, we're going to get you used to and familiar, introducing you to our software of our system. Now remember, KeyDigital comes from the video distribution background. 15 years now we've been creating the hub of the video system and the extenders and switchers of the video system. Having this hardware in place presented a very natural introduction into the control system category of our industry. But then the control system took us at KeyDigital into many more directions as Compass Control has become the unifier for various third-party automation and integration platforms. And now you are starting to see how this all comes together. Now the next question is, okay, what do we use to make all this come together, to unify these various automation and integration devices? And so that's where the software comes into play. Let's start with the PC software. Yes, that's right. Compass Control operates in PC. It is one of the more ironic twists of Compass Control, where its brain and everything is loaded into the iPad, right? Into an iOS device. It must be programmed on a PC. And we chose that for a few reasons. We chose PC because when we were researching developing Compass Control, we had asked a number of our partners, a number of our integrators about some various systems out there that were programmed on Mac, and they said, you know, I prefer it's PC. My business for the most part already has PCs, and if I start dealing with a control system that requires I program it in a Mac, well then that's going to require a few $1,000s in investment up front just getting those Mac computers in. So it operates in PC now, and it programs in PC, but if you're somebody who is a Mac person, then you're probably familiar with the PC emulation software that is out there. For example, VMware and Parallels. Of course, there are a number of Compass Control programmers who prefer Mac devices, and maybe that's what draws them to Compass Control anyhow, of course, being that it's iOS based. And so with the use of VMware or Parallels, you are able to run PC software in your Mac and therefore program Compass Control. Now another very, very important recommendation we have here is please use a widescreen monitor. The larger the better, I've come to find. You know, there's so many windows that could be open in Compass Navigator that it's really just going to be a lot easier and a lot less straining on your eyes to be using a widescreen monitor. Unfortunately, I've had the displeasure of training a few folks how to program on very small 4x3 monitors, and it's just a painful experience, to be honest. So please use a widescreen monitor, use a laptop with a widescreen monitor. I've even seen some folks with the touchscreen software on their laptop, and man, that's a really cool thing. Maybe necessary, maybe not, but you definitely, what is necessary is a widescreen monitor on your PC, desktop, or laptop. I would highly recommend that. Now, the Compass Control software suite is something you could download free of charge from our website. There are 5 components in the software suite. 5 components, okay? So this is your introduction to the various softwares that you'll be in to do Compass Control. Most importantly is Compass Navigator. This is your project programming software. This is the software that you build your jobs in. Your jobs will have various controllable devices. You bring them in, their code sets or modules, into Compass Navigator. You connect your control trees. Says if I am controlling my Apple TV, it gets controlled out of this port on the master controller. And then you finally build your GUI. All of that done in Compass Navigator. What are the other 4 components of the Compass Control software suite, which again has 5 total? The other 4 are what we refer to as the managers. You have your master controller manager, which is enabling you to configure your master controller straight out of the box. You open up your master controller, your MC1000. You're going to need to download the latest firmware into the device. You're also going to need to apply an IP address to the device because it at this current time is not DHCP. So applying an IP address, downloading the latest firmware. That's what you need to do to the master controller out of the box. You do that in the master controller manager. The other 3 managers are code set managers. IR code sets, RS-232 code sets, TCP IP control code sets are all viewable, editable, creating new code sets or manipulating ours in the respective managers. So for example, if you'd like to learn a new IR remote, you do that in our IR manager. So these managers we teach you about in the C2 training videos, okay? So you'll continue your education through to C2 to learn about all of the managers. Compass Navigator, again, is where you build your program. Let's tell you about Compass Navigator, okay? Well, first of all, what brings folks to Compass Control? I, as the trainer, have had the privilege of working with a lot of folks who are very, very experienced in a lot of control systems. And what is one of the more common things we hear is that, you know, I've worked with all of these other control systems, and I usually start my systems with this vision of what I would like to deliver to my end user. And I'm here to learn about Compass Control because as I'm programming that system, I always reach a limitation with these other control system software. I have this vision, I can't deliver that fully because of limitations of the other control systems, where Compass Control doesn't present you with those limitations. It has the capabilities of the most mature and most advanced control systems in our market with the ease of use of some of the smaller more cookie cutter type systems out there, the ease of use. So Compass Navigator, essentially, you are given your tools, which are your devices and your graphical elements, and you manipulate them through the event and action tools. And the event and actions are sentences, if you will, which the blanks are filled in through drop-down menus. If I'd like to control a graphical element, I will find the page that it's on and the name of that element, and then I specify how I want to manipulate that graphical element, and that sentence completes based on everything through drop-down menus, not with C coding. So it's like there is C coding, but Compass Navigator behind the scenes writes that code for you based on the parameters, the blanks that you have filled in through our drop-down menus. Now, there are actually 2 types of projects, in Compass Navigator. Custom project, well, we've essentially gone over that already, right? That iPad is a blank palette for your creation. C3 programming is recommended. C3 certification is recommended, okay? And for years, this is what Compass Control was. We are now glad to have released a modular-based project program as well. The name or the description says it all. Simplistic GUI dedicates large amount of the controller surface to the device control, but in control panels with activity and zone-based navigation, okay? A module is a pre-defined package. It's graphics, right? This whole control interface. It is the library. A library is a one-way code set, and it is, and potentially a driver, a bidirectional code set, already populated on each button in that module. So it's not just bringing in a device, it's bringing in the graphics to go along with it. Every single button already has the desired and the appropriate function on it, etc., etc., etc. And a module applies to all of the iOS devices. So there's actually 3 aspect ratios. iPad is 1 aspect ratio, iPhone, iPod 4, and iPhone, iPod 5 are the 2nd and 3rd aspect ratios. And then there's yet another type of module, which is ZRC, Zigbee Remote Control, our handheld, okay? And the handheld operates off of basic one-way libraries or off of modules. So that, for example, you drop a module into the system and the module has both iOS and ZRC, then your project, which has iOS controllers and ZRC controllers, is automatically populated. Graphics, of course, on the iOS, and events and actions on the buttons in the ZRC and iOS. Okay, now, the modular-based program programming method was introduced really with single zone applications in mind. Single zone. Why? Because everything operates off of a zone connectivity tree. You'll build, and we'll teach you how here in C1, a zone connectivity tree. So that, as you see in this image, if I press the DirecTV button, Compass Control is actually going to execute automatically a macro to select that selected source, in this case the DirecTV. So what might that mean? It might mean the television needs to be on. It needs to have switched to its HDMI input number 1. Your AV receiver perhaps needs to switch to its appropriate HDMI input. And these sorts of macros automatically executed. How do we know how to construct that macro is based on your zone connectivity tree. And so it's ultimately designed, very simplistically achieved in a single zone application. Now, if you're somebody who achieves C3 certification and really understands how Compass Control works and enjoys getting your hands dirty with this, you can try pushing it further. But again, we want to stress that the modular-based programming is done for is ideal for single zone applications. That low-hanging fruit that you as an AV integrator are most commonly presented with. The opportunities of home theater installations, the opportunities for conference room applications where you want to get in and get out and have everything wrapped up within that same day. Now you could create your own modules. You could edit our modules as well and then save them locally on your computer. Because you're able to bring modules into the project in Compass Navigator from what we provide, which is called the local module, from where you have saved your own modules or the modules that you've edited of ours. Those are called the user modules. And then our plan is that we will eventually even have the KD server, which is a marketplace for you to purchase modules from a third-party module creator. Or maybe you yourself would like to be a third-party module creator and post your modules in our marketplace for sale. That will be possible. After all, the programming side of our industry is its own sub-industry within our industry, isn't it? So that was the PC software and the project types. How about the software in the iOS device, right? It's also very, very important. Now, start by downloading the Compass Control app. Just go to the iTunes or to the App Store within the iOS device and search Compass Control. It's free of charge to download the Compass Control app, and this is the best sales tool you can have for Compass Control. Now, for quite some time, we had only one look and feel in the Compass Control app, and it's what you see right here. And some folks liked it and some folks didn't. I love it. Our point here is to pack it full of as much graphics as possible so that it really showcases everything. And it's entirely different from other apps out there from control systems, isn't it? The other apps are more like our modular-based program, where this is a very, very unique GUI where you flick to go zone to zone, and we have these great sliders of light bulbs and shades and that sort of thing. We even showcase some of our third-party interfaces. When you hit the security button, it jumps into our HAI Leviton security and automation panel. You can actually, it has the web embedded, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a very, very cool demonstration that end users actually salivate over it. They love it. And if you would like to see a different GUI, well, now we're doing that. We actually now have up to 12 different looks and feels in the Compass Control iOS app. How do you go through those? When you'll go to our home page here where you have Start, Settings, Registration, press Registration, then Get Demo, and you see Residential 1 through 6 and Commercial 1 through 6. And so, like I mentioned, this is such a good sales tool because you could go in the morning to a presentation with a residential client, and then in the afternoon to a presentation with a commercial client, and chances are we have the perfect GUI to get your client salivating and get them ready to write a check to start the installation of this Compass Control system and everything else that surrounds it. So it's a really nice demo, and I suggest not only you having it in your sales folks in your organization, but also add all of those proposals, load this onto your client's iOS device so they can really get used to it. Now, just so you know, the iPad is the only one that has these various looks and feels. The handhelds, the iPhone and iPod, they'll just have that basic, that flagship demo, as we refer to it, the flagship look and feel. Now, what enables the iOS device to go from a demo iPad to a live controller? It needs to be activated with a license. This software key is model KDCSLX1. Stands for KeyDigital Compass Software License for one iPad, because this gets attached to each and every iOS device in your system. That's right, each and every iOS device. So if you're going to have 5 iOS devices in your project, you need to purchase 5 of these. Okay, now current retail value is $100, and we'll try not to fluctuate that too much. Okay, so $100 is what you're looking at per iOS device. It serves many functions. Number one, it enables you, the licensed AV integrator, to now make traditional dealer margin on each iPad that is going to be a controller. Each iOS device, it's going to be a controller, which is something that you weren't able to do before, right? And we all know that, and we see from our competitors, that they've now stopped even making certain touchscreens and handheld devices and stopped selling those because everything just wants to be on the iOS device. The iPad, the tablet, is how the end users would like to have that. So anyhow, you're able to make dealer margin on each and every controller that's in the system, but it actually serves a more important function as well. Each and every iOS device needs its own license. Why? Because remember, each and every iOS device, even if you have 5 iOS devices in the system, they could be unique. They could look and feel different from each other. One iPad can have access to the entire system, while the other 4 iPads have access to independent rooms only. That's different from other control systems out there, because the iOS device is the brain in our system. You need to have a unique license for each and every iOS device. So that's the technical reason behind it. And then furthermore to the technical reason, it actually purchases a chunk of real estate in our cloud, which I'll introduce you to shortly. So you know you need a license. What does that license number marry to on the iOS device? That license marries to the device ID. This is something that's in our app. Now, it used to be automatically there. When you hit registration, you would see device ID number and see a 12-character alphanumerical number, as you see on the screen here. However, when iOS 7 was introduced, they prevented our app from automatically generating that any longer. So now it needs to be manually generated, okay? Now, just so you know, to continue the conversation about the licenses, yes, if your customer loses their iPad, upgrades their iPad, the iPad is broken and they get a new one, you are able to move that license number to a new device ID. You needed to go through KeyDigital technical support to do that, but it's very simple. You just let us know the new device ID number and the license number, and we will make that new marriage. Now, like I said, this device ID number must be manually generated, so unfortunately it does mean that you'll have to either purchase the iPad for your client or make a visit to pick up that iPad and manually generate this device ID. How do you do that? Well, it's done via a local area network. So you will need two things: your computer running Compass Control and a local area network that has to be a 192.168 type network, just for this purpose of creating the device ID. Of course, Compass Control as a functioning system doesn't need to be a 192.168 network. And that's obvious. Why? Because, you know, we support global IP, for example. So the Compass Control system is going through all sorts of wacky IP addresses when you do global IP. So anyhow, to generate this device ID, local area network, it's got to be a 192.168 type network. So I'd imagine that our folks, and we recommend that our folks out in the field who are doing many Compass Control installs, they have that basic, you know, Linksys, Cisco type router in their van at all times. For when they need to create this, they just plug it in. And what's going to happen? Your computer needs to be on that network, your computer running Compass Navigator software, and your iPad with the Compass app open will be on that same network. So those two devices via that local area network, and there's a button you'll press in the Compass Navigator that pulls up a small key, a six character key. You'll type that key in the iPad. They authenticate each other. The iPad will automatically create then its 12 character alphanumerical device ID, and that automatically populates now, as you see in number 2, in the iPad and also in Compass Navigator. So the software for PC, for iOS devices, and since it's iOS, you know, we had to be pretty creative about how to get the information, the project, now that you have a live controller that's activated with your license, how to get that project into the iPad. Updating the project to the iOS device or to the controller, starting with the iOS devices, involves that company folder in the KeyDigital cloud that I was referring to a few minutes ago. Okay? So actually what happens is you, the programmer, program your system. You have your iPad or iPads in that system. They have that device ID entered as its property, and when you're ready to load that program into that iOS device, you can't just connect a hard wire and load into an iPad, right? That's not our decision. That's an Apple decision. So instead, you will upload from the PC into our cloud, and in order to get into our cloud, what do we check? We check that device ID number. Is it activated? If so, you get past the gate. If not, you don't get past the gate and the project will not successfully upload. So what do people do when they want to, say if they have just one iPad as a tester, as their own iPad, and they're programming a system, but the system has 5 iPads, I just recommend you enter only one device ID. The other 4 you'll just leave blank for the time being, and then you're able to upload and download as you wish. The others don't even try to go up to the cloud. So you could upload to the cloud from the PC, okay? From the PC into the cloud. We check the device ID, make sure it is activated, it gets in there successfully, and then to download it, to update the project into the iPad is a very simple process as well. So both of these processes do require the internet though. Now, let's make one thing clear. Compass Control as a system, as a whole, its common functionality communicates via local area network. You don't necessarily need the internet for a common working Compass system. However, just this upload-download process does require internet as well to do that. And then when it comes time to load into the iOS device, you're able to just go into, once again, that registration. You hit Update Project. And what does the iPad do when it pings our cloud? It says, hey, here's my device ID number. What's the latest project in the cloud for me? And it pulls that one down. So that company cloud actually, very, very cool. It acts as a secure storage for the last project posted to the cloud per unique name. So my iPad, for example, probably has 400 unique projects in the cloud in my company folder. Okay, it's in the KeyDigital folder. And why 400 or 500? Because it's just the license attaches to the device, to the iPad, right? It's not per job site. And so our partners and our customers, oftentimes they say, hey, Jonathan, would you mind taking a look at this project? I'm having an issue. I say, sure. Let me just load it into my iPad so I could see if I'm having the same issue. So I get the project, I load it to the cloud, I bring it down from the cloud into my iPad, right? And if you're a programmer who each time you save a new version of the project, you give it a unique name. For example, Smith version 1, Smith version 2, Smith version 3. Then you actually have each of those 3 projects in our cloud, each of them that has been posted. Now, if you're somebody who just does the same name over and over, Smith, 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 then you just have the latest version of Smith in the cloud. It's time-stamped as it enters the cloud. And that's how it works when the iPad hits Update Project. It looks for the latest project posted to the cloud for that device ID, and it pulls that one down. Now, that company folder also serves another cool function. It is a company folder. It is a company folder. So if you have multiple programmers in your organization, you are able to upload to the cloud and also download from the cloud, so that if programmer X is on vacation, programmer Y needs that project but doesn't have it, and it's not on a local computer because the programmer X took it on a vacation with them, well then you're going to end up being able to you just need to know the project name, which is something you could get from the iPad, and imagine it again, it's called Smith version 3. Then you could download from the cloud the project name Smith version 3. Now you have to know the project name. You cannot, there's not like a graphical interface where you could view that folder. You have to know the project by name, case sensitive. And after that project is done loading into the iOS device, you'll then hit the start button, and it's going to stay in that that splash screen, start settings registration, for a few seconds as the iOS device actually tells the master controller everything that it needs to know about the project. So it actually enables this remote upload download, and once the user presses start, then it's going to synchronize all that information into the master controller, so that you don't even have to be on site necessarily to update the project. You could do that remotely. So if your customer gives you a call, hey, I just need you to change one small thing, you could do that remotely, send the invoice for the programming, but don't need to roll out the van if you're comfortable telling Mr. Customer to hit the update project button when you're all done. So it's pretty cool. Now, that was the iOS devices. If you have a handheld remote, actually that does need to be loaded into the master controller, the KDMC1000, locally. It's got to be loaded locally over the local area network. Okay? So the PC needs to be on the same network with that master controller, and it loads it in via the network. Now, why does it load into the master controller and not the handheld remote? Because remember, the master controller becomes the brain when you have a handheld remote. The master controller is told what button is pressed on the remote, but the master controller has the events stored into it for each button, so that if you have a macro, you press on and it knows it's got to run through all of those things of that macro, of the on macro. All of those things, those commands and events are stored into the master controller, not into the handheld. So we'll teach you about this in the further down in the C1, about the handheld and how to load in. We'll go through all of that. And that wraps up the Compass Control software. So let's review real quick what we learned here in C1 Part 3, Compass Control software. We went over the PC software. Yes, PC software, not Apple, not Mac software. You'll need VMware or emulator, or Parallels PC emulator software loaded in your Mac if you are a Mac person and would prefer to work in your Mac to do your programming. There are the custom project type and the modular project types. And speaking of modules, what are they? It's a package of graphics, library, one-way library, perhaps bidirectional driver, everything. So that means variables. Everything comes in all at once when you're working in a module. Everything comes in all at once. And a module might even contain codes for a Zigbee remote attached to the appropriate buttons if you have some customization that you've done there. Then the app, the iOS app software. The device ID, very, very important. That is the unique identifier of the app, of each and every iOS device that has our app out there. And that's what ultimately gets married to the license in order to go from a demo iOS device to a live controller. It's got to be activated with the license first, KDCSL X1. And then you're able to update to the iOS device by Compass Navigator, uploading to the cloud, and then in the iPad or iOS device in the Compass Control app, hitting Update Project and pulling down from the cloud. Whereas if you're uploading a project to a handheld remote, that is done in the local area network, over the network from Compass Navigator into the MC1000. So that does it, folks. C1 Part 3 is now officially a wrap. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time at C1 Part 4.